Well, hi, everybody, and good morning here from the Temple of Silence in Finland. This is our 76th Dissipation of Glamour webinar and the 16th program in which we are reading through this wonderful book, which, when we finish, should help us with our own individual problem, and we all have them, and make us more effective in contributing to the dissipation of world glamour, which is now again pronounced. And you would expect it to be, given that the 2025 conclave, excuse me, the 2025 conclave is so close, and the other side, so to speak, is throwing up everything they can to try to mislead people and keep them from thinking straight. I just want to say, I think you can feel the Cancerian energy, can't you? I certainly did yesterday. Wow, it really came in strongly for me after our broadcast. It was an amazing change of energy, and we have to become more and more sensitive to these things. I also want to say, as some of you know, that I've been putting up video commentaries on various compilations of the third initiation, second initiation, and now increasingly on the first initiation, where there are now 3 or 4 programs. So I don't know which way you want to begin or whether you've already begun, but some people work their way down from the third degree to the first, and other people start with the first degree and work their way up. But you can find this on YouTube at the Moria Federation Esoteric Education page, and it will be obvious, and there's kind of a playlist there where you can find all these things, a couple of different playlists and so forth. So, all right, we invite you to offer ourselves as a group yet one more time to deal with this glamour of personality, which is really a prevalent, mistaken identity. And everything swirls around what we think we are, and what we really are fails to be registered, or if it's registered intellectually and not in reality. I think a big step comes when we learn how to see things and experience the energy rather than just talk about things. But of course, talking leads to the possibility of actually dealing with the energy. So there's a number of us here. Just want to, kind of welcome you here. Here on the other side, we have Joe and Tuija are helping, and just welcome to. Excuse me, I have kind of morning voice here. Anne Marie, Annette, Bianca, Bibi. Let's see what happened here. I'm coming to it. Bianca, Bibi, Catherine, Deborah, Gregory, Jean-Pierre, Joanne, Karen, Catherine, Leslie, Lori, Marianne, Marissa, Mariut, Martha, Nantnia, Olivia, Risto, Rose, Tuija here's on this other side as well, Vera, and Zenaidi. So welcome to our work together. And if we persist, we will make a change in our own life, and we will, in esoteric methods, uh, help to undermine this prevalent, misleading glamour, which is so dangerous at this particular time, because it can cause all kinds of division between nations and people, and move in the opposite direction of unification that the hierarchy would see us move. Let's have just a little alignment here. And in the silence, we come into each other's presence. And wherever we may be geographically, it is one field of consciousness. And time and space in the usual consideration are negated in this process of meditation. And our goal is to stand, as it were, on the periphery of the ashram, in this case, Master DK's training ashram, where all kinds of ray types receive their training, and help to train ourselves, because without that we can't see clearly, and help to train those with whom we may be put in contact as we begin to know more and deal with our own issues. That's what Master DK's ashram does a lot of, train aspirants for initiation, and really we're all aspirants. Even the great ones are aspirants to their particular next degree of possible attainment. And we will think together, visualize together, make ourselves available using the methods that Master DK has given us, particularly the technique of light. As we read through this book, and it will take, it'll take some years, 2, 3, 4, I don't know yet. We'll come in touch with many techniques, and especially techniques for the dispersion of Maya, the dissipation of glamour, and the dispelling of illusion. Eventually, we'll be dealing with the technique of the presence, and that involves the intuition and the building of the antikarana and so forth. It's very technical work in one way and very practical in another. So let's just sound the Om with our intention of being useful to the ashram. Okay, friends, good. Now we continue our training, and let's just say that the next 7 years are critical in our training. Some of us have been at this a very long time. Some, I don't know, maybe for almost 50 years, perhaps. Maybe some more. So it all has to count now that the world is being forced into a crisis. The last dispensation of the teaching was given after World War I. Well, we don't have any world war, but we certainly have a very volatile situation where right human relations are being abused all the time, as the bewildered human being tends to look out for number one, as you know. A very subtle thing, and it's hard not to be selfish. But by the time we, there's all kinds of degrees of selfishness. But by the time we reach the second initiation, which is the goal and objective of so many, whether in this life or the next few, a major blow against selfishness is struck. And that's the subduing of the raw Mars vibration. And then a kind of altruism comes into the heart from the soul and expresses through the astral body. It means altruism. It really means the other person, thinking about the other person, altrui, the other person. So we've been personality obsessed for millions of years, meaning that's all we see of ourselves. And you talk to very intelligent people in the world today, but who have a materialistic cast of mind, and that's it. The personality is it. There's no sensitivity to what lies within and beneath. So we hope to develop that sensitivity to real energies. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, as I usually do ask, when we start our reading here, we read quite a bit about illusion, and but he's mixing them all together. He's frequently referring to all of these glamour, illusion, glamour, and Maya, and sometimes he refers to them in a general sense because any one of them could cover all three. So make note. That's what I'm asking you to do. Make note of that which may be of particular interest to you as we move along. And then when we take our time for discussion, then you'll have maybe something to say, something to ask, something to point to, etc. Because we want to have what we might call participatory reading rather than passive reading. We can read the books passively for years, but we have to engage our minds with what the master tells us, and we have our own interpretations. Now, later in this section, he says, look, I'm not interested in you copying out paragraphs, and these days it's so easy to cut and paste, We find something that's vaguely on the subject and we offer it up as if it's our own thought, but it's not our own thought. And he says, look, how much of the mountain of vision have you climbed for yourself? So, you might think about that. For a long time, we have to be exposed to what the authorities say. They say this, they say that. We absorb it. We trust it. Okay. But then we have to really begin to think on our own in the light of what has been presented. And at first, it may look pale in comparison to what has been given to us, and maybe it is, but so what? Eventually, it will grow in power and accuracy, and we will become a true thinker, as the soul is called. On the higher mental plane, a true thinker, and that's different from simply being a recipient. Recipient is good up to a point, and we have to always receive, but we have also to think for ourselves. Okay, so we've discussed a little bit of the illusion issue, basically the misinterpretation of thought, even if these thoughts are generated from the soul. We don't have a wide enough point of view. We don't have a sufficiently deep or trained mind to interpret the intuitions accurately, and we present all kinds of false possibilities which we take as gospel, and it becomes dogma, and basically it reinforces that which is not truth or just a half truth. We don't really see and understand the picture. But now he goes on a little bit to glamour. It'll be interesting how he develops this subject. Some of us, have read the book, maybe even more than once, and but now we're taking that sequential approach to it, and see how he developed that with his group. which I was just reading here that 4 of the 9 were already battling glamour in their own life quite aggressively with a degree of success. So we do not want to expect that we will not be battling glamour in our own life. And if you turn to page 120, 121, 122, right in there in this book, the list of the personal glamours is given. So name your poison. As you go down, you can find out where you're likely to have the truth veiled from you because of your own behavior. All of us. It counts for all of us. Okay, the emotional types. And some of this is astrological and ray oriented, and it has a lot to do, I suppose, with the 246 line particularly, and particularly the 6th ray and the 4th ray. The emotional types respond with facility to world glamour and to their own individual inherited and self-induced glamour. It's, what can we say? It's carried in their habit nature. And it's so habitual that, as I said, the excuse is, well, that's how I am. And one doesn't examine it. And the truth is distorted. This is what we built up over the years. So we built up tendencies within our permanent atoms. We built up tendencies within our personalities that never get into the causal body, egoic lotus, but the higher kinds of tendencies, which are true virtues, they do make it into the egoic lotus, but not these other factors. The bulk of the people are purely emotional. Maybe these are people who are not, the moon chain types tend to be a little less emotional because they're characterized by the 3rd ray. The 3rd and 5th ray have an easier time with the 2nd initiation, he says, than other types because they tend not to be as emotional. The bulk of the people are purely emotional, and maybe 80% is my guess, 85%, and they are the ones, when the time comes, who will go to the star Sirius for monastic training, whereas others will choose different paths. And occasional flashes of real mental understanding, and then he cautions us, very occasional, my brother, and usually entirely absent. But, with our modern media and the availability of this kind of amazing technology, which puts us anywhere on the planet and makes accessible to us so many learning tools, maybe the condition of this, as it was written 70 years ago or so, is improving. Glamour has been likened to just visualize as we go along here, glamour has been likened to a mist or fog in which the aspirant wanders and which distorts. There's one of those important words, the veil of distortion found on the etheric plane is related to this glamour distortion, and which distorts all that he sees and contacts. That's exaggeration, minimization. The little is seen as big, the big is seen as little. You don't get a true picture of things. So it distorts all that he sees and contacts, preventing him from ever seeing life truly or clearly, or the conditions surrounding him as they essentially are. He is, what should we say, subject to his own bias and predisposition to misunderstand and emphasize wrong things. Well, we've all done that, and but catching ourselves at it is the tough part. When he is a somewhat advanced aspirant, now what is a somewhat advanced aspirant? DK has told us that every true aspirant has taken the first degree. Okay, so maybe even after the first degree, there's a lot of fighting with glamour that goes on there. When he is a somewhat advanced aspirant, he is aware of the glamour and occasionally sees in a flash. That idea of a flash of revelation. Let's look at this thing here. Flash of revelation is very Uranian. It comes from the sudden power of disclosure that the planet Uranus carries within itself. So he occasionally sees in a flash in what direction truth for him may lie. Now, this happens in the initiation chamber, particularly during an aspect of the initiation, as we're told in Initiation Human and Solar. You see ahead for a while. You see what you may be having to do in your application. That's why, when various teachings say, well, you take all these initiations at the same time, you have no time to apply them. So it doesn't seem to make sense to me anyway. So basically, every time you're given a direction that you have to work in, you go out there into the normal world having experienced the initiation, and you really have to work it out and apply it. You have to earn the right to go on by applying what you've been given. But then again, and we're all familiar with it, the glamour settles down upon him, and he is rendered powerless to release himself or to do anything constructive. Not a very cheerful view, is it? In other words, when we are affected by glamour, we're in prison and we are not constructive. At least that's how the teachers view it. His problem becomes further complicated by his consequent distress and his deep disgust with himself. And I'm sure Master DK speaks from his own experience. There was this disciple in the Dina books who was on the verge of taking the second initiation, and Master DK understood him very well and tried to explain him to himself and about all the recriminations that he was experiencing and the self-accusations and the unhappiness with his own work and all of that. He says, if you want to look for the roughest time experientially on your path of initiation, look between the second and third initiation, and that's where you will find the greatest distress. And that's also the place where you are fighting glamours within yourself most avidly. So this the disciple ISGL, who had a lot of six-ray, loads of it, six-ray soul, six-ray astral body, and a bunch of first ray. Okay, so here, we may recognize that glamour and feel, oh, how could I be that way? And he walks ever in a fog and sees naught as it is, as it truly exists. Not very enviable. He is deceived by the appearance and forgets what the appearance veils. Now, we talk a lot about superficial things, but what are the energies really and truly behind these superficialities which we take for reality? He is deceived by the appearance and forgets that which the appearance veils. The emanatory astral reactions which each human being initiates, see, we make our own trouble, right? Ever surround him, and through this mist and fog, he looks out upon a distorted world. So we're surrounded by inclinations towards distortion, and we don't see truly. This is a big problem today, and I think, if we're honest, we'll admit that humanity is much affected. We often create our own distortions. A distortion is a misshaping of reality, or we attract those kinds of distortions which are like our own, just the way we attract thought forms which are like our own. And the difference here is that the master actually sees the glamorous conditions as astral phenomena. It's part of the vision, and we human beings are more likely simply to feel them rather than see them. So these reactions and the surrounding aura which they constitute blend and merge with the world glamour and fog and form part of the miasmas and unhealthy emanations for which the masses of men for millions of years are responsible. Ever since early Atlantean days, and especially once the Black Lodge decided, look, humanity is too close to initiation now. We want to stop this and stop their progress. And so they fed the glamour as they do now, and they do it in such a subtle way that you don't see it. You just see the working out on the physical plane of undesirable conditions, but behind it are these beings. They're human beings, initiates of a previous solar system, who have decided that they would rather stay with the world of form and the third aspect than they would to go ahead into the world of love. So this is what we're dealing with, and DK is doing his best here to really explain it. I would point out to you, he says that in Lemurian days, think about this, glamour and illusion were relatively unknown from the human standpoint. Well, maybe there's some other kind of standpoint than the human. Sometimes, there are people on this planet right now in whom the solar angel has not implanted itself yet. They are of what we might call symbolically the Lemurian consciousness. And there are certain groups in Australia and Africa and maybe Japan and some other places who just really haven't come up yet to the emotional stage because they're not being nurtured by a solar angel and will be in the next round, we are told. So glamour then, maybe for them too, is relatively unknown as we experience it. But he's going back to Lemurian days, and he says there were no mental reactions and but little emotional response to the environment. Now, today, humanity is so emotional that it's kind of hard to imagine a non-emotional response. But this is what he says. Men were largely just, instinctual animals. And, when you're looking at the egoic lotus and you're unfolding that first petal, that's what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with an emotionally responsive person. You have to get into the second petal of the egoic lotus, and that takes a lot of time, even in the millions of years before that can happen. Glamour began to be found in Atlantean days, and since that time has steadily precipitated, and this is so interesting because it's the hierarchy's view of us until today. When the hierarchy looks at humanity, it appears to be walking in a deep and constantly changing density of currents which hide and distort and which swirl around the sons of men and prevent their seeing the light as it is. So that's a wonderful definition of what the hierarchy sees and what we live in constantly and don't really know it. We're not yet to the point, but now the point is coming where we can actually begin to experience objectively these things and see them as if from a distance so we can handle them. That's the point, instead of identifying with them. So just think about that. Just pause for a moment here and just see how hierarchy looks at all of us here, walking in a deep and constantly changing density of currents, a swirling gray mass, as it has been called. These currents hide and they distort the truth, and the light is blocked out. And that's what we have to deal with, and that's why progress is relatively so slow, because of this condition of slavery, enthrallment, false desire, all those things, wrong desire. Anyway, we have to have some objectivity about this, and the time has come now. It hasn't climaxed, but the time has come when the beginning of the assault on glamour can occur. Not yet, the assault on illusion. So DK says, this is all the more obvious when it is remembered that the other kingdoms in nature are relatively free. from glamour? Well, I guess when we talk about the non-thinking kingdoms, we can imagine that, but the angels and some of the higher devas and the various hierarchies that we find, they are free of it. We human beings identified with the fourth ray. It's one of the major glamour producing rays. And now that we are aspiring and water and fire are coming together, there's even more of the steam and more of the veiling of the truth. In our race, let's see, yeah, in our race, the Aryan, the fifth root race, right? The world illusion is gathering weight. When it gathers weight, it comes to the point of precipitation, correct? It's gathering weight and slowly emerging into recognition in the human consciousness, slowly. And this is a real point gained, to move on to yet another obstacle, but it's a higher form of obstacle. So let's just say we're confused in a higher way, let's say. For that which is recognized can then be intelligently handled. Recognition is the big thing. So if we just go around unconsciously, just perpetuating our habit nature without standing back and saying, whoa, take a look at what I'm doing here, then we can't handle it. And DK really helped people handle their problems by showing them to themselves. For that which is recognized can then be intelligently handled if the will to do so exists. And so recognition is the first step, is key, followed by, let's say, by the will to do. And that's still another step. And hopefully, an aspirants like ourselves is becoming stronger these days. Today, illusion is so potent that few people whose minds are in any way developed. Now, think about this. Few, because we DK people, we read, we think, we talk, we have a somewhat developed mind here. Few people whose minds are in any way developed are controlled by these vast, illusory thought forms. They sweep across nations. They pick up millions of people who all think alike and think in an inaccurate, illusory manner. And we have to show them if we can, it's shown to us, the error of our thinking. The fifth ray should help. The fourth ray from the intuitive level should help. We think incorrectly and we think habitually. We keep on repeating our thoughts in this manner, and we don't really see where the errors are. So they're controlled by these vast illusory thought forms. Just look at the political process all over the world, and you will see such a combination of glamour and illusion. These vast illusory thought forms, which have their roots and draw their life from the lower personality life and desire nature of the masses of men. Hence, this attack on the glamour of personality. A lot of people are not yet even personalities, not quite, They haven't really integrated the mechanism even in a lower sense where they can be selfishly effective. But they have to go through that stage, and of course they have to experience that. But there are others who are ready to get out of that stage, and people like ourselves who should know a little something about this should be able to help them, if we can help ourselves, of course. So what's missing here is really accurate, independent thinkers. They are missing, and we have to make sure that we are that at the very least. It is interesting to remember also, in connection with our Aryan race, that these thought forms draw their vitality also. Now, this is interesting because it shows how the high becomes the low. They draw their vitality from the realm of ideas, but of ideas wrongly intuited and grasped. The mind is not broad enough, wide enough, deep enough, trained enough, and we just, some good thought comes down from the higher realms, an idea, and we just make a mess of it. We interpret it according to our old mindset. Now, our old mindset just will not do anymore, And people are filled with mindsets that they hold on to stubbornly and rigidly and dogmatically. And we have to, it's very hard, we have to show them why the old mindset is inhibiting their apprehension of what really is truth. So these ideas, and they come from a good place, maybe they come from the Buddhic plane, okay, but they're wrongly intuited and grasped and forced to serve the selfish purposes of men. Let's say now, before the third initiation, we should recognize, let's see, RCZ, recognize our selfishness. We all have it, and sometimes it's very subtle, and we should recognize what that is, and then, maybe we can make some progress in taking that second initiation, which is such a, in a way, high and important propulsive initiation, because it's like, once you take the second initiation, suppose you're going down a nice broad river, has a nice current, everything is going pretty well, and you're able to row and all that, and suddenly ahead of you are these huge rock walls, and everything narrows down, and the calm and slowly moving river starts to be a huge, rapid force that just shoots you through this kind of canyon where a lot of dangers exist, and you're going much, much faster than you did before because you're really on the straight and narrow when it comes to initiations 2, 3, and 4. There's a lot of danger ahead, a lot of rapidity, but that all begins when you enter this stream, and it has quite a current, and there are parts of it that are very dangerous, and we just have to learn how to handle those things, always having the assurance that somehow our solar angel, our angel of the presence, is and guardian angel are looking over our progress, and oftentimes intervening on behalf of the personality which it has under supervision. So anyway, we oftentimes force good ideas to serve our own selfish purposes. I was just recently, let's just say there's some good quotes in the Bible, our Western Bible here, which is largely a probationary book. This is what DK says. And along come people, and for their own selfish purposes, they almost deliberately misinterpret statements in the Bible. I just saw some kind of article that had about 10 or 15 phrases which are so commonly misinterpreted. Like, one of them is the rich and poor you will always have with you, but me you have only for a short time. Okay, but the whole idea is that it's quite okay to be rich and to be poor, and we don't need to solve that because Jesus said you're always going to have rich and poor, so we don't have to correct that situation. And there are many other statements which are just because we are still selfish, we glamorously misinterpret them and we twist things in our mind to justify our own desire nature. So it's been really pitiful when you look at it, the kinds of things that have been, oh, you have to obey the law of the land. Okay, it's very biblical. Oh, give me a break. There's so many distortions in the law of the land, which are not yet the law of God. So, people says, well, just obey your government. You're in conformity with the Bible. Okay. Well, we can see through that immediately, but the people who seek to manipulate the popular mind use these misquotations. Maybe they actually believe them. I kind of wonder. I think they see a good instrument to manipulate the popular mind, and they use it, knowing that so many people believe in the Bible. Okay, now going on. Their forms have been brought into activity by the steadily growing creative power of mankind and have been subordinated to the wishes of men, the wish life, Neptune, Mars, and so forth, through the use of language with its power to limit and distort and manipulate, of course. So this is the poor and sad way in which we degrade. I think that, the word is degrade. We degrade good ideas according to our own selfish personal condition. Okay? So the illusion language can limit, distort, manipulate. The illusion is also precipitated more potently than would otherwise be the case. And this is what I've been talking about by the effort of many devoted, idealistic men to impose these distorted thought forms upon the mental bodies of the masses who cannot discriminate. And this is, in a way, what a demagogue is all about. You speak to the raw base emotions of the crowd who is afflicted with mass consciousness, knowing they will follow you because they can't really think for themselves. Now, when the Leo period emerges, people begin to think for themselves because Leo has a lot of the fifth ray in it and a lot of independence. So this constitutes one of the major problems with which the hierarchy today has to concern itself, the imposition of ideas, demagogic ideas upon the masses who cannot discriminate wisely. It is also one of the first factors which the master has to consider in connection with any aspirant or disciple to judge of his usefulness. Well, okay. I think, there's a lot I wonder here. Yeah, I have a line drawn in the sand here, and I think maybe we get down to this line and then we discuss further possibilities and what you think about this and how it works out in your life and what you see as solutions and any problems that you may have about it. We try to get practical about it, of course. Glamour, as we have seen, is of more ancient standing and of earlier emergence than illusion. Why? Man could not think in the early days, okay? So I put it down. When man cannot think, there cannot be illusion, but he certainly can feel. And in early Atlantean days, with the assistance, the nefarious assistance of the Black Lodge, glamour was fed, And probably when the moonchain types came in the third subrace of the fourth root race with their power of thought and ability to manipulate and so forth, it was a signal to the initiates of the earlier solar system who had decided upon the selfish way that they could come to this chain and retard progress. It has little in it of mental quality, that's normal glamour, and is the factor controlling the majority, again, 85%. The objective of all training, now this is our training, the objective of all training given on the path of discipleship and up to the third initiation, which shows, we're still battling it out, is to induce that clear thinking which will render the disciple free of illusion and give to him that emotional stability and poise. These are Libran qualities, which gives no room for the entrance of any world glamour. When we get overly excited and we start careening from one point of view to another, glamour can enter. But when we take the attitude of the observer and take what's called a balanced point of view, a more completed point of view, which is related to harmlessness, glamour does not enter. This freedom becomes possible when there is in the aspirant no personal glamour. Whoa, big order, right? And no deliberately self-induced response to the determining factors which have produced glamour down the ages. And with these factors we will deal. So this then is the end of, this is the reading, academic reading, and it's number 16? I think it's number 16. I didn't think I saw a 17 up here anywhere.
Yes, it is the end of 16.
Okay, thanks, Joe. All right, that's good. Right, number 16, and today is the 29th of June, 18, and So next time we're going to have the beginning. It'll be a week from now, roughly. It'll be a beginning of doggy number. This will be 77. I suppose we're on 76 now. And this is doggy number 76. Of course, the dog represents the height of devotion and is a sixth-ray, second-ray animal. And, when we have the sixth ray and the second ray, the glamour can abound because, as he says, the sixth ray is particularly prone to it and also good at its dissipation. But the second ray is so easily identifying with everything that it's just immersed in all the glamours, DK basically says. So this is the academic reading number 17, and I guess it's going to be on the 6th of July, and on that day we will also have the more scientific work with the science of triangles. Okay, academic reading number 17, and it's 6th July. All right, so now it's time to have a little discussion about what we've gone over here, and I'll tell you what, I try to make it a bit smaller, then I always know I've been there, and we can take more in under our eye at the same time. We can't get it all, but we can take in some. Okay. And hopefully you can read that if you want to. So, your thoughts, your questions about this or about any, basically what I've done with all of these things is open them up to the whole field of occultism, because it may be that you have a burning question or thought in the field of occultism. We can always relate it to whatever we're talking about. So, yes, and let's see, what have I got here? Mariot, okay. What do you think of psychopathic people? They are very selfish. Yeah, sometimes you have to have a new incarnation before you can do much with it. It is said that they can't be helped. I think everybody can be helped, but sometimes, and it really arrested my attention, that the soul, the solar angel, angel of the presence, drives a person who is really tending towards the left-hand path, drives them crazy, drives them mad, so that the whole psyche can be disorganized and reorganized, and you sort of start fresh. So that's actually one of the methods, is to make the apparently crazy people crazier, so that their whole mindset is disorganized and can be reset in a future incarnation. Now, when it says they can't be helped, okay, but maybe masters and higher initiates know the way. There are very deep obsessions with these people, and one of the problems is many of them are open to what Master Moria calls the dark obsessors and extinguishers. There are these lower forms of life, we call them demons and other things, who work on the inner planes, and they just look for ways to get in to the empty house. And sometimes you get multiple personality and things change, and they're carrying their very evil vibration into an open house who is less evil than they are, but has somehow opened the door. The big thing about all of this, again, Master Moria says, cultivate your heart center, have heart radiation, and then the dark obsessors and those extinguishers on the astral plane cannot affect you, because the heart radiation will repel them. I've been with a lot of people who've had, they've had various problems, and it was just obvious that there were other entities within them, and the entity would emerge and retract, and they definitely had the habits that imperiled the user, habits of maintaining their house that imperiled the user. And in that sense, as long as they remain open to the negative influences of the lower astral plane, it is not curable. It is curable when you shut off those entities. And he says a lot of psychically inclined people don't want to do that, but he says much use of the color yellow will help. It's a mental color, and it will reduce the inner psychic attacks, even if one doesn't know one is being run or obsessed. It will reduce it. So the heart, the color yellow, uh, the contact with the soul, the changing of the desired nature, there are ways to improve the situation, but sometimes it's just so bad that you just have to reshuffle the cards and rearrange them in another life. Yeah. And meanwhile, a big danger because people are terribly distorted. Who are all these people that are going into these groups and murdering others? They're absolutely driven by a destructive emotion. I was reading the other, well, all right, here's this man. He just killed 5 people yesterday in a newspaper office in Annapolis, Maryland. Uh, you look at him, his picture, it's pretty scary, and you kind of see that straight ahead look, that looks like an empty house. And I'm remembering also here in Europe, the Swedish, was she prime minister? If she was a minister in the Swedish government. And this guy is walking through the department store, and a voice tells him, pick up a knife and kill that person. He's an empty house, and that's exactly what he did. He stabbed her to death, Was her name Lindgren or something like that? It was a terrible thing. But these dark obsessors, they are active. And we just have to make sure that our heart radiation and our soul love and our connection with the Christ, who is the great exorcist, is so strong that we cannot fall victim to that and can help other people who have fallen victim to it. Okay, Maria, that's what I have to say on that point. Anything further that you want to say or ask, just let us know. Okay, so Michael, go ahead, Mike.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mike. Good evening. Night. Good night. Yeah.
One of my study sections in this last period has to do with harmlessness and the power of harmlessness that would overcome karmic conditions and so forth if only we lived our life that way. And I see it having a direct relationship with glamour and illusion.
Yeah, it's a huge subject, very difficult to instill true harmlessness within oneself. Think of the definition. Harmlessness is the expression of the life of the man who realizes himself to be everywhere, who lives consciously as a soul, whose nature is love, whose method is inclusiveness, and for whom all forms are alike, in that they veil and hide the light and are but expressions or externalizations of the one infinite being. It's a big order, okay?
It's quite a challenge for us as disciples, and I can see how, if as disciples, the thousands of disciples in the world, or maybe millions, if we all began to live harmlessly,
the
world would be transformed.
Yes, you're probably correct on that. And of course, DK specifies that harmlessness does not negate straight and even drastic action when required.
Absolutely.
That's the amazing thing about it. Who is the harmless surgeon? The one who admires the cancer, or the one who cuts it out? So drastic action is involved to look ahead and see where the good truly lies and what the plan really is. So you're right, and it's a demanding process that we should keep in mind as we try to live harmlessly. We should remind ourselves of it every day and see in any circumstance what is the harmless response to this circumstance, which usually is the one that really promotes the good. So it's an ideal and something, we need to do it. There's no question. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you. Yeah. It's when I think about the very first requirement of harmlessness, the man who realizes himself to be everywhere. Whew. Omnipresence, the very first thing. So it's very demanding, at least in that definition, and it's been around a long time. And it doesn't mean weakness. We know that, right? It doesn't mean giving up in the face of superior negative forces. It's none of that. But it really is a tuning in on what is the good for all concerned, and with bravery and courage to do those things and to harm the true nature of the individual, not at all, but to promote the true nature of the individual, even if outer vehicles may temporarily suffer. So tall order, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. Okay, Vera, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hello, Michael. On the topic of emotions, yesterday I had discussion with a friend on politics and environment. And, astrologically, myself having very strong water signs, Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer, I got, of course, a little bit emotional, and that was picked up by the other person. And I realized that by becoming myself, not too emotional, but still there was some emotional force behind that, it was uncomfortable for the other person. And then by allowing my emotions to get in, I was sabotaging my argument in spite of having enough information to back it up. And so I was pondering on it. And today, during your talk just now, I realized I don't, because yesterday I was saying it's my nature to be emotional. But today I thought, no, I don't need to, it's not a question of suppressing that power, but it's raising it, transmuting it on that, positioning myself on that mental plane, and having this awareness that there is tremendous power behind the words, well-defined thoughts. And so it was quite like, I thought, oh, well, I made another little step. So I'm going to practice now.
Yes, that's excellent. Now, I have to go along with you here, Vera. Yesterday was, being the Cancer full moon, was one of the most emotional days in the year. And I found myself also more emotional than I've been in years. I guess it was, I thought it was a good thing, actually, because of the subjects to which it was related. But there was something that really affected, in a Neptunian sense, the astral body. I thought at this moment for a good, because I wasn't really in any kind of dialogue with anybody. It was just within my own nature. But there are these great currents, and when they change, they really have a subtle effect. So when you're having a debate or a discussion with somebody on the day of the Cancer full moon, and you have all these water signs in your chart, you can imagine what the tendency can be. I think we have to replace emotional reaction with loving sensitivity and realistic observation at the same time. The Tibetan is always saying, he's not saying, oh, poor you, he's not doing that, but he's saying, let me help analyze your problem for you, or with you. And so he's bringing in a particular type of non-critical, loving analysis, which is reinforced, of course, by the love now coming through the astral vehicle. And, when we have confirmed the second initiation, the astral body will be generally more loving, and there'll be less emotionalism that interferes. Now, sometimes he talks about first-rate people that they they're not often emotional, but they can have to sometimes get into an emotional state to really accomplish something. And they work it up within themselves. So it's important. I was thinking about this maybe I've mentioned this before, but this general in the Second World War who had a very strong reincarnational recall about being a Roman general. His name was Patton, George
Yeah.
Patton, and he was a very emotional guy. You know what I mean? He could command armies all over the world, and he was an unrelenting warrior. He was a Scorpio, you know, with the moon in Capricorn and Gemini rising. But he had this quick emotional response, which really humanized him, you might almost say. It made him less of an austere figure. It showed his human side. So when you're a psychologist, which we all try to be to a certain extent, the chakras involved in that group are the head center, the throat center, the heart center, and the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is so we can come into rapport with the people we are trying to help. And we're not so mental or so distant that we can't relate to them and they can't relate to us. So the solar plexus can be used, and the ability to feel the emotion of others without getting necessarily swept away in a bad way within ourselves, it can be very useful. So use those water signs. They can really put you en rapport with others and help them see and solve their problems. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Tuija, go ahead, please. Self-muted. You got on. There you go.
Okay. No?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, thank you for these ideas, Michael, about the harmlessness. I think, too, I have been working a lot with this thought, and it just reminds me about this, that very often when we talk about emotional or astral, we think about the reactions. But when we think about, it's the second aspect in that sense, when we think about the divine, the Father, Mother, and the Son. And the Son is the astral part of, or emotional part of the divinity. And that makes us human and compassionate, and we need that. It's the bridge between when we think about the form in very concrete sense and then the spirit. So we need that, and we think about Christ, who is the head of the whole hierarchy. And that is the issue in this solar system, the present solar system. We have to get to understand how also the emotional body is used for the divine purpose. And then I was thinking about that from the White Magic, from page 320, he says, all true esoteric schools begin with the control of the astral body, and the jailer had to memorize and practice these 3 rules after he had made some real growth in the manifestation of harmlessness. Rule number 1, enter thy brother's heart and see his woe. And I think this is something, a huge thing for everyone. I think the vision, what Michael, you were putting about these thousands and millions of disciples, how many we would really need practically in our world to practice this so deeply that this would be true, that we would not enter to anyone's life with the kind, harmful ways that we try to organize others, we try to tell them what they should be doing, and we are harming them, because we should enter in the brother's heart and see the woe or see the oath. And then the second rule is enter thy brother's mind and read his thoughts. And rule 3, blend with thy brother's soul and know him as he is.
Tuija, when I'm remembering back when I was in the arcane school and first became a secretary back in 1973. So it was a long time ago. And there was a booklet that was called the Secretary's Manual, and Alice Bailey had assembled it, I suspect, and somehow these three rules, which carry in them the manifestation of harmlessness, really caught my attention. And I thought
Mm.
that for whoever wants to deal with other people in a constructive manner, regardless of how you might feel about them, personally, if we can stick to these principles, we can really help. It really stood out for me as very important. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And one thing what Vera was saying about what is very interesting thing when we think about the psyche of human being, and we think about the earlier system, which was about mother matter and intelligence. So there is some kind of instinctual nature in us when we are hunting the power. We don't even realize it. And this power issue, how to hold the power, Vera was pointing out that when one starts to react, then we lose the power. And thinking the method of Christ, which is to turning the other cheek, and that is a new way how in this system the power is kept. When one is able not to respond to any way which is harming. Egyptians were having the way of Ma'at, which was the complete, a perfect balance in everything. So how we are allowed to say our opinion, but how do we say it? How do we build that towards the other person? Do we make the preach like Christ is teaching, turn the other cheek? And that is the new way of, and it is related to this harmlessness, how we don't harm.
It's basically a second-ray approach in a second-ray planet and a second-ray solar system. But the second ray is not weak. I'm recalling what he said to Roberto Assagioli. He said, "You have the will like tempered steel of your second ray soul." And boy, that surely arrested my attention. That it's possible to be firm and harmless at the same time. As a matter of fact, it's required, really. Okay, thank you, Tuija. I've got a few people here whose hands are up. I have Karen and Natnia. So, Karen, go ahead. Then Natnia can follow you there, and then Leslie, go ahead.
Okay, well, yesterday at the full moon, is when the Supreme Court Justice retired, here in the States. Today we had this shooting, and then we've had this whole issue with, the refugees. And it's been an astounding amount of things. And trying to not react and to, use these concepts we're learning and these things about harmlessness that were just said, I'm finding it very difficult to discern what's really going on here and what to do, what really to do, because, it was shocking, yesterday, the idea of this new Supreme Court justice, because we have here a House and the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court pretty much all along one line here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's a good point, Karen. And well, look, the fact of the matter is that DK promises before the great soul of the American people emerges much suffering. He promises that, and it's probably because of the ascendant selfishness that is occurring. It's all been there, but it's been under wraps, or at least it has not been able to gain the ascendancy. Now, this is the work of Pluto. And before the first initiation, Pluto and Vulcan are the two active planets. Page 70 in the astrology book, Pluto is dragging to the surface all of these things which have to be seen. The line between good and evil, let's just say between selflessness and selfishness, and the consequences of either one have to be seen. Now, so we may deplore what is happening, and it may look like many gains that have been apparently solidified as law are now challenged, and we are in a retrogressive path. But I think it is predicted there will be an awakening of the American soul in power. As a matter of fact, I would make a suggestion that for those people who are appalled by the selfishness which is now ascendant, not only in America, but by its own influence all over the world, concentrate on the soul of your nation and its tremendous power and beauty. In this case, the indigo soul of America. And Lincoln, the great avatar, he talked about with malice towards none, and mercy for all. Concentrate on what the American soul really is. And people in other countries do that for your own soul and see it emerge from the inside out and put great power into the emergence of the soul of your nation, which is one of the reasons that, Tuija and I put such an emphasis on the destiny of the nations and the emergence of the soul of the nations, because this is not a problem that is going to be won strictly by the old methods of antagonism on a horizontal level. I was just reading the other day where DK is telling us how the world servers have to behave, and it's quite different than just, picking up your gun or your sword or whatever and fighting it out on a low level. It's really esoteric work that in this case, that the indigo soul that lights the way, the indigo soul of America, must emerge. And we've got to put our energy into really seeing that happen. And then it will make disappear so many of the obvious retrogressions with which we are plagued at the moment. That's just my advice. I work with that all the time, and I have a tendency, I'm an Aries type, to really get in there and, have a fight about it. But I think it's more effective to work with the emergence of the great soul powers of your nation.
Thank you. Well, I know that the meditations, the group meditations that we do are what really are the most helpful to me, and I believe the most powerful.
Yes, thank you, Karen. We try with that, and look, we just try to keep it coming and coming and coming, regularity, rhythm, and then just working esoterically on dissipating this terrible retrogression and glamour. But you could expect it. The bottom of the aura is being dredged, not just in the United States, but in humanity all over. It's almost like necessary before the reappearance of the Christ. It's going to happen. It's going to be in everybody's face. All the long suppressed, horrible stuff is going to be up for us to solve. And I'm along with you. I could really react. I just, oh my God, look at this. Now what do we have? 25 years of reactionary Supreme Court or something like that. But then I think, what does DK advise? What does he advise here for us? And then my method changes. It changes. Anyway, I suspect that the soul of America will rise. I'm just speaking of my own country, although I live in Finland and have great respect for the Finnish soul, great respect for it. But it will rise, and it will evict the malefactors. It will throw them out. It will do that. It will expel them. And I'm putting my money on that, frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, now let's. There's a few more folks now. I see Leslie there. I see where is Natnia? Okay, I hope maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly, Natni, but there you are, Natni. Did you want to say something? Yes.
Yes. What a lot to think about today. This has been a tremendous session. Lots of new things for me. But what I wanted to ask you was that I heard that cancer, if you're born in cancer, it's the door to initiation. What does that mean?
Well, it's it's said to be this Cancer and Capricorn, and these are called the two gates. So the big statements that are given about Cancer is that it's the gate into life for those who must know death. And then the statement about Capricorn is the gate into life of those who know no death. So, these have to do with incarnation and escape from the limitations of incarnation. And I just want to say about any sign of the zodiac, it can work towards the possibility of initiation. In this video book that I made called On the Egoic Lotus, something like that, I showed or tried to show how every sign of the zodiac could be operative in every petal of the egoic lotus, including the ones that are particularly associated with initiation. So simply because, let's just say that Capricorn is very much the sign of initiation, but it doesn't mean that if your chart is filled with Capricorn, you're going to take initiation. Same with Cancer. You might take initiation or you might not. It describes the quality of the opening or expansion which could occur. Now, in the case of Cancer, we embrace humanity. We integrate all of our forces because it's a great sign of integration. And we see the wholeness of life as one thing. Now, all of those are initiatory movements. So, I don't think that DK ever said per se that when Cancer is in the chart, you will take initiation. Any sign of the zodiac can be an open door to initiation, depending on where you stand, what you're trying to do, and how you use the power of the sign, the rays that are involved, and the planets that are involved. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the idea of initiation for any particular sign of the zodiac. It's true that Leo leads to the first initiation, but not necessarily. It's true that Scorpio leads to the second initiation, but not necessarily. It's true that Capricorn leads to the third initiation, but not necessarily. It just depends on how you use what you've got. Use it in the best possible way, and new doors may open. That's what I have to say about that. Anything further?
Thank you. That's
if that's helpful.
That's answered my question.
Okay, very good.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, so let's see. Any? Yes, now, Catherine, I see something here, and I also see from Leslie. So I saw Leslie first. Let's see what you got going on here, Leslie. We hear you say that the politicians who quoted the Bible received a sharp denunciation from the church to which he belonged. Yes, I followed that. Sometimes it seems like some of the church directors are stepping up to the plate and fulfilling their responsibility. And this church issued a statement supporting the opposite policies that this politician was promoting. So, okay, obviously it was so self-serving. It was so it was so manipulative. Really, the things that were coming out. But look, the recognition is the key. And if we begin to recognize the manipulation that is being forced upon the unthinking masses, and upon us too, whatever, it's a step in the right direction. As Patton's grandson, a student in the 80s or 90s of the Ageless Wisdom, good. I don't know where you got that, but that's really interesting. If you saw that movie with George C. Scott as Patton, he was, going to be a good Patton for sure. Patton had this reincarnational sense, He really was somehow into destiny and the other worlds, and maybe he somehow passed this on and so forth. So people are placed in high positions, dangerous positions. Maybe if he had been listened to more carefully, we wouldn't have the world situation we have now, or it could be worse or better. But, there's amazing people on all the different rays who have that deep insight into what's really going on. And I think, he was a man of destiny. He was just really put there because of all his previous training in the art of war, and he was put there to make a difference, and he did. He did make a big difference. Some people worship warriors. It's a peculiar thing. And you'll know what I'm saying here. Some people who are the farthest thing from a brave warrior worship warriors to compensate for their own deficiencies. It's a psychological dynamic. And let's just say that unless we introduce esoteric psychology into an assessment of politics, we will not do all we can in the political arena because we'll be electing those who are unsuited psychologically for the task. So thank you, Leslie. Very interesting stuff. Appreciate that. Now let's go on here to Catherine. And, right, Catherine. And not forgetting the power of the great invocation. Okay, right. It's a lot more powerful than most think and very important to say out loud. Absolutely. Look, what did he say? It's your greatest instrument for, promoting the return of the hierarchy, the reappearance of the Christ. It's a great shambolic word of power. It's the invocation for light and power, it's called. I don't know what happened to love, but that's in there too. And, we spread it all around the world. We use it all the time. And we use it with heart, with mind, with understanding about where are these points, these sources, because you can interpret the great invocation on many levels, all the way from local within the human being itself, all the way up to planetary, systemic, cosmic, and so forth. So it is a tremendous instrument in the hands of those who will be faithful to its meaning and faithful to its thought or repetition. Just like the Om, he said, look, you're all sounding the Om out loud. It's good, but it's not as effective of hearing the the soundless Om inside. There's something about the internal sounding of the Om which can be even more powerful. Now one example is incredible. I've seen some mindless sounding of the great invocation out loud. It was a tragic event. Took place long ago. This young man who was dying of AIDS had a group around him, and out of fear, I don't know what, they just shouted the great invocation. They shouted it, and all kinds of things were lost in that shouting, that assertion, like somehow this is going to save my life. Well, it didn't, of course, but you can do this internally as well. What counts is the depth of feeling, the depth of understanding, your ability to tune in with the sources, whether it's out loud or silent. Those are the things that really, really count. And of course, on World Invocation Day, we repeat it, every half hour or so, It's very important. So thank you, Catherine. Okay. Let's see if I'm getting everything correct here. Now, is there anybody else that would like to offer a thought before we get into our Alexandra? There you go. Alex.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sorry. I came in late because I keep mixing up whether it's AM or PM. So I'm not,
Understandable. Me too.
yeah,
Okay.
talk about clarity of mind. So I'm not sure if I'm repeating something or something, but just following what Karen said. Yeah, so first of all, I want to say there's a book, I might have mentioned this, written by John Meacham, which is like best-selling now in America, called The Soul of America.
Oh.
And his premise is that America has been through the worst before, and in the end, it always comes right. And it's very beautiful. He talks about the better angels of our nature and that sort of thing. But when I looked at it, I thought, well, he hasn't studied decay, and he doesn't know how much suffering, we might have to go through before it all comes right. And like Karen says, it's like you wake up every day and you're like facing your worst. You can't believe it. And then I think so what do you do when you're facing the worst? And I thought of Michelle Obama's famous statement, when they go low, we go high.
Right.
And it does seem to be the only solution, is that we go higher and higher. And after all, when you are facing the worst, you go within, and you go higher and you go within. And I just hope that, as a group, as a global group, that perhaps that's the solution. I mean, as well as being active in the world as best we can, that we can somehow, constantly reach this higher ground of detachment. We were having this discussion last night about Assagioli's psychosynthesis, and it was interesting the way, cancer fits in with this. Are we building a lighted house, or are we in a dark prison? And the prison is in the mind. And so this is what I was trying to clarify, which is that to practicing the observer and seeing what the contents of the mind is, and detaching from that, it just seems to be so important now, because the atmosphere of the global mind is so poisoned, and it's so easy to get sucked into that. And it just personally, that's what I'm practicing, and what I'm finding is that to, turn off the news and for a while and withdraw from that and go higher. And as you say, have the faith in the soul of the nation. I mean, I'm just saying this to encourage myself.
Of course, no, of course. And this is the quotation that I have sometimes referred to. He talks about the selfishness of various nations, okay, and the degree to which they are serious, such as Great Britain and France and Russia and so forth. And then here of the United States, the selfishness of the United States is also due to its youth, but it will eventually yield to experience and to suffering. There is, fortunately for the soul of this great people, much suffering in store for the United States. Now, and then he goes on, have we lived through that? This was written in the 40s, but I think not. I think that we have not lived through what he is actually talking about. And I think also, the clarification of the line between good and evil, it's a very sinuous line, and sometimes it's difficult to distinguish, but the boundary between these two forces has to be made more clear to more people than it presently is. And I believe that the present chaotic and mindless and ego. I just don't we start with adjectives here. Policies will produce conditions where far more people will see the consequences of selfish isolationist thinking. So this is my faith, and when I look into the indigo soul of America, which is a great soul, and not the only soul. We have one soul of humanity, one soul of the planet, of course. But right now, as I've said before, I think the problem is that the Christ will set up his headquarters in America. This is what I think. And it'll be related to the United Nations. And as DK says, the capital of America will move from Washington to New York, which is a second-rate soul city. And I think all of this is like eventual. But I think that the reason there's such a terrible sixth-ray Geminian conflict is to pave the way for part of the reappearance process. And I'm just, just like you and the rest of us, I'm throwing myself subjectively into the fray to the best of my ability. And, using the power of meditation and imagination and of mantram, and the principles involved to, what can I say, throw the scoundrels out. What can I say? Let's just say the soul of America and of the other nations will eject the unfit. And I'm counting on that soul force. So anyway, this is the page. It's a Raise and Initiations, page 429. And I think, we need to keep it in mind. So I appreciate, Alex, all your thought on these and your writings. And, I appreciate your point of view here. So anything further?
I just wanted to ask you, you said something about 300 years possible setback for humanity. Where does that come from?
Esoteric Psychology 1, I believe.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find it. Delay 3.
Yes, someone was asking.
Okay. But at the end of this time, rest in the hands of the margin of difference will also be only between 100 and 300 years. This is where the impulse towards synthesis now is too strong to be delayed. So in this Esoteric Psychology 1, page 368, the possible delay of up to 300 years, and elsewhere, elsewhere he's more dire. He says, we may have to start the whole experiment again and all that. But I noticed, I noticed that those dire words were removed from the introduction to the problems of humanity. Yet they stand, and we have to be cautious. Okay, so that's that reference.
Thank you.
368. You bet. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say it's getting harder and harder, as we know, to stay positive, but just finding that balance between, because I find people either get lost in the light or in the dark, finding the balance between them, can't put our heads in the sand. On the other hand, we can't get lost in the dark, and I'm very grateful to the group for this support.
Well, you'll be interested to know that where we're now holding our conferences in Arizona at the San Marcos retreat, golf resort, was once an ostrich farm. So hopefully we don't take the ostrich attitude from the previous 100 years. There's ostriches all over the place, but I think we're doing better than that. Okay, thank you, Alex. You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Tuija. Go ahead. Whoops, what self-muted?
I'm sorry, I'm talking via the mobile and it is hard to put these buttons. But anyway, thank you, Alex. And I was thinking while you were talking that it something which is warming my heart is to see how so many of us are responding to these moments and to these needs the way that what one can be doing. And so I was reflecting on the work of the Scorpio, the labors of Hercules. So when we think about the disciple everything is about the work. And for me, it's the way of the Christ what I'm always contemplating when I'm thinking how one should be doing. What is the practical terms that one can do and should be doing? So he was criticized that he was going towards the lower class. He didn't go to the temples and disappear on the mountains and the caves. He was stepping towards humanity. So this is the model for all disciples. We have to step towards the humanity. And how do we do that? Then I was thinking in the labors, the teacher, in the labors of Hercules, in the labor of Scorpio, and humanity is covered by Scorpio. So all what is seen in that labor is so important for us to study as the methods. And the teacher is saying, by kneeling, no, we rise by kneeling, we conquer by surrendering, we gain by giving up.
Yeah.
Very
So
important.
so thinking about occult methods, one thing is to really come together. And I am just putting one thought, because while you were talking, I was thinking the work within. What about if we would be, and when we think about the clamors of personality, so we have clamors in ourselves, we have group clamors, we have the national clamors, we have the clamors in humanity. So we have so many challenges in that sense. How do we now step towards the humanity? Because we are working disciples, as the labors of Hercules is telling how the work is done. So he, in the labor of Scorpio, goes into the swamp and is meeting the Hydra, which is the manifestation of all the clamors, which can be seen all what is in personality, and we work now with the personality, the whole, the huge thing. So what about if we would start to practice, everyone in our own places, to come together, to visualize that we all kneel together, that we all surrender, we all give up. Because when we think about our actions, they are always related to karma. And thinking again the same idea, turn the other cheek. So we have to, as members of the humanity, we have to be very careful in our actions as well, that we don't gain more karma. And that made me think, maybe that is the reason why the great ones, they take sides, but in their actions, they work with the law. And how do we now learn to use the law the way that we are not creating more karmic relationships? Pointing out to this 300-year setback, maybe all of those are related exactly to that one cannot work against the law. One has to then accept if some bad things are working out. No, we don't have to accept, but the methods, how we work. I think that is a big thing what we should be thinking about. I don't have any answer, but I was just thinking maybe we could all think about these words.
Maybe
we rise by kneeling, we conquer by surrendering, we gain by giving up.
You know, Tuija, I sent along by email an attachment which you have about the methods of the new group of world servers. Do you think you could find that and send that to me? Because it is so somehow important.
You mean the rules from White Magic, what I was reading?
No, not the rules from White Magic, but it was a few days
the
ago.
harmlessness.
Yeah, It was how the new group of world servers has to act, and how they are not. Well, I found it tough because he says they don't take sides, they don't criticize, they emphasize the
Right.
positive.
Yeah.
If you find that, would you send that along to me? I can't go looking
Yes.
for it right now, but it is so important, and it's almost shocking the position he asks us to take, because it's so easy to get outraged when one sees the retrogression, the obvious retrogression, and yet he recommends what we have to do. So it's
You
worth
know, because if we,
rereading. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, because it's about occult work, and how I am understanding it, that we have to also think about how the etheric body is functioning. So how the holy ones are working, are taking about the substances into themselves and transforms it. And I think that is, while we are expressing the thoughts and we use speech, but at the same time, this is the thing, the work to be done by the new global servers, that we are taking these substances in us and work them in our own lives.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I found it, okay, and I'm not
Okay?
going to read the whole thing, but let the spirit of goodwill dominate our minds, and there will be no room for the spirit of criticism and the spreading of destructive discussion. It is for this reason, and in order to develop the group of servers who can work along true and spiritual lines, that there must be increasing emphasis upon the need for harmlessness. Now, this is the paragraph here, this work of educating the men and women of goodwill, right? Very purpose of world goodwill in the world must be proceeded with as rapidly as possible. Now, they tried in the 1936 expression of the second ray to head off the war. It didn't work. The work must, however, be carried on with no infringement of harmony. So I'm just recommending that we're going to contemplate this, not right now. We'll come back to it. There must be no interference with national preferences and programs, and no belittling of national governments, no matter what they may be. No political activity should be carried on in the name of the new group of world servers. Such action would continue the old methods and perpetuate the old hatreds. There must be no attack. There must be no attack upon any party or group, and no criticism of any leader or national activity. Such old methods have long been tried and have failed to bring peace on earth. The members of the new group of world servers and those associated with them stand for no party, neither for nor against any group or form of control. This is their imperative position. For attack or counterattack, they have not time, energy, or money. Yet their attitude is not one of passive non-resistance. They are working at balancing world forces and fostering the growth of that group of men who stand for goodwill, understanding, and brotherhood. So this is from Esoteric Psychology 2674, and I'm recommending, not at this moment because our time is quickly running out, but that we will be able to ponder this particular paragraph and compare it with our methods, what we may be tempted to do. I certainly am among the tempted, let me tell you. Now, I think,
Michael.
yeah, let me just say one more thing to you. And then, yeah, when things were still solvable, DK was writing in this way. Later in the Second World War, things got so bad that he did indeed begin to talk about Hitler and his evil gang. You know what I mean? So, I guess there are different methods for different times. I just want to point that out. Go ahead, Tuija.
Yeah, that was the solo sessions when I was taking. And tomorrow we are continuing this, so I would invite everybody who would like to work with us with these ideas now. We will do that.
The Soul of Nations. Yeah.
Okay.
And when the soul of a nation is sufficiently evoked, an esoteric school representing hierarchy can appear. He told us about that. So, it's one of the, and the church and masonry and these other methods of bringing in the good, they can be strengthened when the soul of the nation reaches a certain degree of saturation of the good, saturation of the good. So, we have our occult methods and we must place the emphasis upon them. None of us is in the Senate, in the Congress, and, all that. Those are outer methods, they're good, whatever, but our real power lies in our spiritual occultism undertaken together according to the age-old methods given by Master DK. Okay, friends, look, time is, oh, wait a second. I just always hate to, collapse the wave of polarization, says Stacy. Well, it's a good point, Stacy, and I would just say this, that in a Gemini personality country ruled by the sixth ray, it is the very definition of warring polarization, which almost, in a way, I don't like to think it, but it has to emerge so that people see the consequences of their thoughts and actions. So let's just see, much is coming down the road, but Gemini and the sixth ray, whoa, that's so different from Aquarius and the second ray, which is inclusive, unitive, embracing, etc. And we're on our way as the soul of the nation emerges. I don't mean to make this all about America, but America is very influential, and America seems to be a place at which an attack from the inner side is focused. So it will have world implications. There's a lot about this and politics that we have to get into, of course. But now, if you don't mind,
I just few little things about America and Europe. Why it is so crucial how we are working, because it's the under Master R, who is the region for both of these areas, and both of them has the idea of unification, United Nations, United America, or United States of America,
yeah.
United Europe. So all of this is telling about the idea that the more and more individual nations comes together is something what hierarchy wants.
Yep.
And that's why it's so dangerous if we lose sight from that.
You're absolutely correct. And it's not like it's an easy problem, because there are old thought forms which are very dangerous to democracy. And if they are let to be out of control, then the democracy will be challenged. And there are also authoritarian governmental approaches which do not promote democracy, and on the other side, they threaten it. So it's really, like you were talking about Argo yesterday, it's really the Argo moving with the disciples between Scylla and Charybdis, the whirlpool and the rock. It's a dangerous passage, but we will apply the occult methods. We will apply these occult methods, and they will eventually work. Okay, so everybody, now let's go on with our, I enjoy these discussions. I'm glad we're having them. Let's just see. I've got to find it. Where's my, formula? There it is. Okay, fine. And let's see, what we have to do is put yourself, everybody, on self-mute, so we don't get those additional sounds, that come, they just come with the computer, I guess. And excuse me. But I'll tell you what, I've got this ongoing cough, but I must say that the pure air of Finland has helped me a lot. So I would say it's about 80% reduced. The United States is great and vibrant, and there's a lot of cars. So in breathing, that stuff is not so great for me, but I recover when I come back here. So, okay, here we go. So in the silence, we come together, and we feel our power to work as an integrated group growing in the silence. And we reach out and we embrace the group that has gathered. When you're doing this in your smaller units, maybe groups of 7 and 9 and so forth, you can, follow the instructions exactly. And we'll now use the protective formula individually and for the group as maybe, this is some of the most dangerous work you can do subjectively. If we don't think so, we're just underestimating where these forces of Marakara, are concentrated. So, cross of divinity, as a soul I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. The light radiates forth individually from the cross of divinity, and the many crosses produce the one group cross, and see the light radiating from it. Now we'll blend the three lights. We know how to do this. The light of matter, it's etheric physical. The light of the reasoning mind on the lower mental plane. Those two first. Lift up the light of matter to the normal mind. Its vitality rising. And the light of reasoning, thinking, clarifying. The light of the normal concrete mind. And then the light of the soul. We can visualize it how we will. Some visualize maybe a few inches above the head. And from the jewel and the lotus and the petals descends the light. We feel that soul light and it comes to the mental plane and blends with the vital light of matter and the light of mind. The light of the soul blends, and three are one. The three are one. Illumined mind vitalized from below, and our thinking will direct the beam that arises from this triple light. And so we will say together, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Oh. So each of us has produced a triple light as one, and the group in composite has produced the triple light as one, from which a great searchlight will arise, turning on to the astral plane as both an instrument of detection and an instrument of destruction. So imagine the beam out there on the astral plane, in there, out there, and we together are wielding this beam as we then use the formula while visualizing the beam. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we're linking the area that needs clarification with the area from which the energies flow, which can bring clarification. And now we strengthen our beam of dissipating light. We strengthen it with the spiritual will, the monadic, atmic will in the jewel and the lotus and the sacrifice petals, all the way down. We strengthen the beam. And imagine this as it's happening. With power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And then we're going to work with this glamour of personality. They're also interrelated. It's mistaken identity, it's separativeness, it's egotism, materialism, it's a limited point of view, and it all ends with the afflicted individual thinking that he or she is the center of the world. It's like geocentrism, which was believed in the medieval periods. And it led eventually to heliocentrism, which was an improvement, but still not true. There was nothing centric about the sun, just one of billions and trillions. So, the formula, the words of power, here we go. And we say together, visualizing our strengthened beam of dissipative light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of personality. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of personality from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. Now, these are the words of power, and you'll visualize all this in your own way, but always as if a member of the group, as we will now take our 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose as we see the work proceeding. So when you work in this way on behalf of the group and see the group working thus, and you form a good mantram, a word of power, you repeat it 3 times. This is Master Moria's advice, and that's why he says, lie, 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 perish. You can understand the tremendous power behind such a statement when a master of his caliber offers that kind of repetition. So as the clouds and miasmas, the veils, the mists, as they are dissipated, the sun comes out. The sun as the symbol of whatever state we need. In this case, we need decentralization. It is the condition that removes the glamour of personality. Decentralization. And every ego, lower ego, shrinks to its appropriate size. And under the influence of this sun of proportion, disappears finally. And we're left with true vision and true sight. So together, we withdraw our beam from the astral plane, refocus in the light of the mental plane, knowing that it's always ready. It will be of use individually for our individual glamours, and it will be in this more global work, group work, able to contribute to the group beam, which clears away all obstacles and leaves the sun shining symbolically. And we will sound the Om 3 times. And we will imagine that as a result of our labors, some clarifying of the psychological condition of the subtle bodies of humanity has been accomplished. Well, step by step, friends, week after week when possible, we inform ourselves on these matters, and through our reading and thinking, and we contribute to the actual work via our meditation. Now, you know, the books have to be read again. They have 7 years. 7 years. They should be read again and assimilated as never before. We're trying to help with that by reading the reappearance of the Christ section by section as we do the Tibetans' reappearance of the Christ meditation. We're trying to, with the soul of the nations meditation, read the destiny of the nations. Fantastic book, even though much has changed internationally. And we'll put an emphasis now on a great project of assimilation and application of what you encounter that the Tibetan has given, and then we'll be ready for the next installment of the teaching. So tomorrow you can use your comprehensive broadcast link, and you'll get the Soul of the Nations in the morning, 5 a.m. And what I'm doing with these programs, and especially the ones at this point, which are simply webinars, I'm trying to post them. It's a new learning curve for me, but trying to post them on YouTube, just the way all those initiation video commentaries are going up. So I'll try to post this one in a little while, and then the posting will continue on Makara. We're working things out there in a new approach. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. This is a little bit longer we went today, a lot longer, huh? And thank you for your attentiveness and giving of your time and concentrated thought and alignment to uphold an ancient technique which Master DK tells us it works. It works. So with faith in that, we continue offering in these Ask programs the approach to steady, rhythmic, reliable meditation on these matters that really, really count. If we can go deep enough and do it with consistency. Okay, thank you. And Olivia and Tuija and I wish you all the very best, and we're seeing you and working with you soon. Okay, lots of love, and farewell for the moment. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.